Okie dokie. So let's work our way through the the quote-unquote siding here. You can see the beaver's been busy. So again, you can see this area here. So I'm assuming that would have been the siding. Again, not particularly easy to see, not well defined like we've seen some of the other sidings on the line. And this kind of throws you off too. You can see all of this material that's been kind of piled up here. So maybe as they were kind of doing work, and you know, the stuff just got dumped on where the siding was. And so here, coming up, we have our next sort of point of interest. And just before we get there, just a quick note: why they set up a spur at East McKirdy when you had a siding here is unknown. I mean, literally, you know, they're a few hundred feet apart. So that's kind of a bizarre type of situation. All right, so next point of interest. So you can see here that we have the Milepost 100 marker. I missed this the first time I was through. So this is a redo. We were through here in August of 2020. So just a little under 2 years ago. I missed it probably with the trees and stuff like that. Probably didn't see it. So that is the mileage on the Kinghorn line. And so for the original lines, what we need to do is subtract 49.7 because the original line started in Jellicoe, not Long Lac. And so if we do that, we subtract the 49.7, this becomes 50.3. So milepost 50.3. Okay, so speaking of the original lines, while we got a minute here, we'll do our usual history lesson. So this line was constructed by Canadian Northern Railway between 1911 and 1914. It was going to be one of the final pieces in Canadian Northern's transcontinental ambitions. Canadian Northern got their start in Manitoba in 1896. They began sort of acquiring rail lines and building a few short lines and things like that. And then their first big project, beginning in 1899, was the construction of a line between the then city of Port Arthur, which is now Thunder Bay, and Winnipeg. And that was completed in 1902. And then after that, they began building all kinds of lines very quickly throughout the prairies. And then they also started building north from Toronto, eventually reaching up into the Sudbury area. Now, eventually what happened was Canadian Northern realized that they needed a transcontinental line for the company to continue to grow and move forward. Now, the only problem was, ballast is a little bit better on this side, they didn't really want to build between the Sudbury area, specifically Ruel and Port Arthur, because the construction was going to be very difficult and it was going to be therefore very expensive. So they looked at all kinds of options for years. Particularly they tried to get a running rights agreement with Canadian Pacific, and none of that sort of panned out. And so eventually they were forced to build. And so construction began in 1911 and was completed, as I mentioned, in 1914. So New Year's Day 1914, the last spike was driven. And the line opened for traffic in 1915. Now, unfortunately, kind of a perfect storm of things sort of conspired against Canadian Northern. The cost of construction of sections like this and through the mountains of British Columbia, and then what was happening with World War I basically bankrupted the company. And here we're getting, it's a little wet under here, so it's a little hard to pedal because it's soft. By 1917, the company was in serious financial trouble and had to be taken over by the Canadian government. And a year later, They were forced to merge, amalgamate, whatever you want to call it, with a bunch of other Canadian government-owned bankrupt lines called the Canadian Government Railways. And so that merger formed a new company called Canadian National Railways. And the nationalization process took about 3 years and was completed in 1923 with the absorption of the Grand Trunk lines. And so in 1923, the name of this line changed from the Nipigon Subdivision of Canadian Northern Railway to the Dorion Subdivision of Canadian National Railways. And it continued as such until 1960, when there was a big reorganization with Canadian National. They changed their name from Canadian National Railways, plural, to Canadian National Railway, adopted their modern logo, and part of that, they reorganized the lines in this area. So the Dorion subdivision was merged with the more easterly Kinghorn subdivision, and the whole line became the Kinghorn. And it continued operating until 2005, when CN decided to discontinue service. And starting in 2008, they began ripping up the rails, and that process was complete by 2010. All right, so we've arrived here at a little stopping point. You can see my crude marker. There's a piece of a tie in here. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through a rock cut section here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a footage that I shot this morning. I knew that the sun was going to come out, and I knew we're going to get a lot of shadows and contrast. So I previously recorded this section. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip ahead and go to the end of this rock cut area. All right, before the sun pops out and we lose the perspective on here, it gets all sort of washed out with the sun. I wanted to walk you through this cut. This is one of the very few rock cuts that you'll see on this section of grade. We are kind of, there is rock around us. You can see these big ridges. You can kind of see it up over there, but where we are in proximity to these nearby lakes, you typically don't see a lot of rock work here. We kind of left that back behind at Pidgetawabik and Orient Bay. So you can see the height of the cut. It's probably, in some places, 10 feet, maybe a little bit more. You can see it here, it's on both sides. Again, it is springtime, and so there tends to be water in some of the cuts because it doesn't particularly drain well. Again, you can see that very jagged nature of how the cuts were blasted. You don't see that with modern blasting techniques. The faces of the cuts are a lot sort of smoother. Just looking to see if there's any, usually sometimes we see the drill marks from the drill, but we're not sort of seeing any of those. It's a fairly lengthy cut. It's not particular, again, not particularly high, but it is fairly lengthy. Again, here it's maybe 5 or 6 feet. And then the last little sort of vestiges of it here. No drill marks that we can see. It's a little break on the south side here. And just kind of spotty over here. And so this is basically where the cut comes to an end. Again, not particularly high here. It's maybe, just judging off of myself, it's about 5 feet. And so again, you can see more debris. There's a tie plate there. And okay, so we're going to just continue our journey to the west here. All right, so we're back in the saddle. We'll leave that rock cut behind. Not sure what the dogs saw. Chipmunk, squirrel. So lots of, one of the things you're going to see is lots of debris alongside the grade here. And lots of, oh, squirrel. So Still going. Lots of very clearly defined, oh, she can't find the squirrel now. Lots of clearly defined culvert markers. So this is, this one here is 100.40. So again, that is the mileage on the Kinghorn. And so for the original lines, that is 50.7. So as I was saying, you're going to see lots of debris, lots of ties, like just tons of ties left on the side of the grade. You can see here, you're going to see some on our, when we drop down and look at some culverts and stuff. You can see all the ones here. Lots of pieces of telegraph poles. It's almost like now we got too much sun. Too much contrast here. It's always night when we were going the other way. We had it was sort of bright overcast, and so really evens out the light. But I mean, what are you gonna do? Okay, I'm gonna zip you ahead a little bit here. Okay, so next spot here, trying to see if this is the right. Okay, so I think this is the one we have to stop at. So this one was an interesting one. So we have a culvert here. Appeared to be sort of a stone culvert. Didn't turn out exactly like that, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna drop down and have a look at it. All right, so we made our way down below the grade, which is about, I don't know, 15 feet above us here. Just a mess in here. Very difficult to get down here. So I'm not quite sure what we have because I can't really see. We're gonna go hop over to the other side. You could see that there's kind of this stone wall. It looks very old. It appears to be a plug of ice down there, so I can't tell if it's a more modern culvert or if this is a stone culvert. Again, you can just see all the debris. Those stones look like they've been here for a long time. They're just absolutely covered in moss. That would probably have a lot to do with the trees that are around here. You can see all of the ties and again all of the debris. One really neat thing, we've been sort of mentioning these, the bucket of spikes. So you can actually see. So originally spikes used to come in kegs, and then eventually they came in buckets. So you can actually see the bucket of spikes. Okay, so we'll hop the grade and go have a look on the north side. Okay, so we made our way down here on the north side. It was not easy. There are so many discarded ties around here. It's crazy. I had a hard time working my way down. You can actually see part of it, telegraph pole here. And I think that's the pole there itself. So mystery solved. It is, I'm pretty sure, because normally I mark it on my GPS if it's something old. So it is a more modern metal culvert, but you can see the rock wall that they've constructed here. Again, it's probably been here for a long time, just judging by the amount of moss that's growing on these stones. Okay, so we'll hop back up on the grade and we'll continue our westward journey here.